Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Thank you for joining today. As promised, we are back on the North Texas Beltline running the McGuire Local in Farmersville. As we briefly mentioned in the last video, the McGuire Local leaves Kingston Yard and heads to Farmersville. And the only industry that this local serves is the ethanol plant there in Farmersville. Now, this is a fictional ethanol mill. There's not currently one in Farmersville. In fact, there's not any rail-served industries in Farmersville, although there used to be. Farmersville was once known for its onions. On top of that, it has some other reasons to be famous, but that's the one that I remember right now. So when you get up here to the ethanol mill, there's a couple of things that happen. There's some tracks for dropping off hoppers that deliver corn. There are some tracks for picking up the loaded ethanol cars. There are tracks for delivering tanks to be loaded with CO2. Now, to be fair, I do know that CO2 is not delivered by rail. It's usually shipped as dry ice or pumped through pipelines. However, I wanted to just kind of have some freedom. So when I made this route a long time ago, we ship CO2. And then on top of that, lastly, you have a track for loading empty covered hoppers to carry like the leftover, spent corn and all that stuff to be used as a feedstock for livestock. So 4 different areas where cars get spotted. And whenever you come in, your train is not blocked. So you have to come in and do some sorting, which is what you're looking at right now. We're kind of getting the train together. Typically, the way I like to work it is I like to work the 2 corn tracks first, which are kind of back off to the right where those covered hoppers are between the 2 elevators. And then after that, secondly, I always prefer to work the ethanol tracks, which are in the background to the left where you see some takers back there. So in JMRI, I did make the 3 tracks you see on the right here into a small yard. And so sometimes when the McGuire Local comes in, it will bring some cars that it will just kind of set out here on these tracks. And when it runs in later times, it will sometimes pick those up, deliver them to different spurs here at the mill. But I don't really create too much control there. So sometimes, you might end up running a car back to Kingston. But in that case, you'd kind of think of it as just a small yard being used to store empty cars. So it's not unrealistic. It's not out of the prototype. Small yards like that frequently got used for that kind of deal. Looking back at all the video clips that I've made over the last year, I realize it's extremely rare that I keep the camera this still for one shot. So I think it's pretty impressive I managed to do this. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and work the corn tracks. So we have some pickups over here on the first track. We're going to grab those and then we'll pull those out. And then I believe we have no pickups on the other track. So I think we're just going to set aside our pickups over here towards the ethanol tracks, just out of the way, so that we can go ahead and make our setouts that we have for the corn track. I did build some randomness into JMRI for this one, so I've run this local probably 4 or 5 times by now, and not one time have I ever had hardly anything in common with the 4 or 5 times I've run it. Every single time has been considerably different, which is fantastic. And now we're going to go ahead and head over to the other track so we can work track 2. I do have these tracks set up in what's called a track pool in JMRI. So, essentially under certain conditions, which did not happen today, sometimes it might tell you that it's trying to deliver to track 1. But if track 1 is full, it might deliver to track 2 instead, even though it originally wanted to go to track 1, because I made them into a track pool, which allows you to place cars on either track, and it still counts them as delivered. So that's a cool feature in JMRI to allow you to basically create more or less multi-track, industry spurs. Track pools are very helpful also just for making sure that you don't get too much traffic bottled up in any one spur. And here we are again, just kind of reordering our cars, getting things in order. so that they make sense and so that we can have our cars blocked before we leave. Kingston Yard doesn't bother with that because Kingston Yard has a lot of throughput each day that they have to take care of. And so mostly they're just focused on getting the locals out. There's only one train from Kingston Yard that is blocked, and that is not this one. I do have a video coming out probably in a few weeks where I'll talk about that one. All right, so what we have here, the 4 cars on the, or to the right, I guess you could say, those are going to be left here in the yard. We're going to move those in just a minute. And then the 3 cars we were working just then are going to get delivered to the other side of the mill. So here we have at least one pickup. I believe we're going to take the white tanker and put the black one back. Yep, sure enough, here we are getting the white tanker out of the way. And then the Santa Fe hopper and the beer can tanker right next to the locomotive, those will both be set out here at the mill. But the CSX hopper that we have there and the white tanker, those are going to be our 2 pickups that we take back to Kingston with us. Well, you can see that now the next thing for us to do is get ready to make our runaround. We do have to get to the other side of our cars in order to be able to shove them back to the spurs where they go. And this is the point where we're going to go ahead and pull off the 4 cars that are going to stay here in the yard. We're going to set them off on track 2. The other industries here in Farmersville are worked by the Farmersville-Princeton Turn, which runs out of McKinney. I do have a video I made about that previously. I'll either put a link in the description or I will post a little tag up here in the top right for you guys to click on. But that would be a great one to watch if you haven't seen it yet, just to understand how the rest of Farmersville is served. All right, and now it's time to head back and grab our last 2 setouts. We do have 2 tracks for setting out the little short tankers, and then we also have 2 tracks for setting out covered hoppers to be loaded with feedstock. Once upon a time, when I was first learning about how I wanted to set this mill up, I did some research into the ethanol making process from corn and managed to get enough detail actually to get exact, well, say that with quotes, but rough estimates of the exact ratios of inputs and outputs. And it was actually extremely insightful into the industrial process of ethanol making. All right, now we're finally going to pull back onto the siding here in Farmersville and request permission from the dispatcher. I have seen shorter trains, but I have seen longer ones too. Either way, a train's a train, so not too much to take back today. I have noticed with all the run-throughs I've made at the McGuire Local, I haven't had a lot of pickups yet, so it has taken quite a bit of time to get cars into that industry. Next up is Kingston Yard, and what you're going to see here is Since this local crew is not responsible for switching these cars into their tracks, all we're going to do is pull forward and drop these off onto the RD track, since those need to be sorted out. And that'll be coming up in another video here soon as well. Just kind of talking about how we classify cars here at Kingston Yard. But that'll be it for today. So McGuire Local, nice and short, takes about an hour to run. A fun little train with a lot of action in just a small space. Thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more, and we will see you guys next time.